Welcome everyone, this is Pilot Niels and you're listening to LOTRO Players News, where we take a look at lasers and LOTRO and here at LOTRO Players. And this week we have with us Sanswinda
Hello.
and Krister.
Hello.
Hello everyone, and this week we had another update to the game, update 37.1, which was released on Wednesday, September 13th. And in there, first off, legendary item DPS has been corrected to remove the difference between weapons reforged before and after update 37.0.1.
So wait, does that mean that you don't have to reforge your weapons again, or you still have to reforge your weapons?
I haven't the slightest idea. Based on how they worded it, it sounds like that you don't have to worry about reforging again. I think they wanted to make sure that they did that, because if they didn't do that, that means people would be complaining about paying to reforge it twice.
Right.
And reforging weapons at level cap aren't exactly known for being cheap. So yeah, so if you were caught in that little bug in there, your weapons should now be working properly. Also, increase the physical weapon DPS by about 8% to correct some earlier changes to damage variants that had an unexpected impact on DPS. With Bjorning, Composure now correctly replaces both Hearten and Hearten Any form if spec'd into the high trait tree. And Recuperate's healing has been reduced slightly, and Rat's cost has been increased from 10 to 20. Recuperate healing has a little higher than intended, and its Wrath cost has been left at 10 when it was meant to be 20. Recuperate should still be a strong heal with very little cooldown, but with a Wrath cost that better matches its potency. For the Burglar, Clever Retort once again restores rather than drains power when it consumes dust in the eyes. Yeah, I think that would need to be fixed. And equipment, yes. Equipment with damage negation effects should no longer damage the player when it procs.
I love that. Trying to sell that. All right, so this mitigates your damage, and you're going to take some damage. That's the fine print.
Yeah, it will mitigate your well, it depends on how you define the word mitigate. Yes.
That's right.
Yes. The Riverfolk bed, Riverfolk hearth, and Riverfolk chair were a bit too small, even for small folk, so they have been increased slightly in size. And as for the Guardian, Rupture now correctly increases your enemy's incoming damage for the intended 5 seconds duration. And many effects were erroneously set to expire after combat despite having regular durations. These effects have been fixed. Also, final adjustments have been made to the Forester's Crafting event, which begins on 10 a.m. Oh, never mind. Final adjustments didn't work. So yes, the Forester's event has been postponed again because they thought that they had fixed it, but apparently it became obvious after about half a day or something like that things weren't quite timing right yet, so they had to shut it down again. I have a feeling that the reason why they brought this out in the first place was so they could get all these timing issues fixed before they had all the rest of the crafting events done.
That's right.
Yes. And this update includes support for an updated Tale of the Shipwrecked Mariner event, which includes a new event featuring new missions. The Tales of the Shipwrecked Mariners and Stowaway the Old Man on the Shore begins 10 a.m. on Thursday, September 14th, and continues until 3 a.m. on Wednesday, September 20th. So let's just say September 19th, especially if you're Krister, who lives on the West Coast, where I believe that's
Or
right.
you believe that that's where all the leprechauns live? Because that is true.
Yes. And this event returns every year. It returns each year. All right. And that is it for the release notes.
I love the corrections where it's whatever it's supposed to do is doing the exact opposite of what it advertises. Rupture now has been corrected, so it no longer ruptures later. Not that I'm bitter. Yeah, I hope that doesn't come across.
Oh well. Yes, that's the thing. Little bugs here and there always creep up, apparently. In that case, a plus sign where a minus sign should have been, or vice versa, can create all sorts of fun things.
I always love that because it's like it enters the used car salesman territory, of how you envision things. No, we're serious. This will prevent damage. All the reports say that this increases damage. Well, we're kind of still working out some bugs, but
uh, I was just thinking it'd be like when I was young, where I could just imagine a used car salesman trying to sell a Ford Pinto back in the. I don't know. I don't know if you remember that infamous recall.
it's only been rear-ended once.
Okay, yes, you
I do.
yes.
The Pinto, and then I remember the Gremlin, too. The Gremlin was another fantastic vehicle.
Well,
it had like a bubble window or something. It was.
Well, when you consider the name of the vehicle, you would expect there to be a few gremlins in there, right? All right. Let's then head on to Bori. That's right, because we had the first Bore for update 37.2. So yes, they're already testing for 37.2, and in there, the biggest thing is that they had the first round of the Mariner. Mariners are confident melee fighters who wield swords deftly to challenge the forces of evil. Mariners have an innate sense of flow of combat and use their balance to adjust their fighting style to best fit the moment. Mariners also know how to use combinations of individual movements to create powerful skill chains. In fellowships, mariners can use shanties to coordinate and motivate their allies, as well as craft strange concoctions to confound and disrupt foes. And a note about mariners is while mariners are a dual wielding class that can wield both a sword and or a dagger must be equipped in the offhand. Either a sword or dagger may be equipped in the main hand. And though there are some daggers that are not properly flagged, so they don't work right, but I'm sure they'll fix that. Well, I hope they fix that by the time they have release. So the mariners are a swashbuckler, essentially.
It sounds like a mariner is a champion on a boat.
Champion on a boat. Well, I was thinking swashbuckler was probably more like it's seeing how there are medium armor, sword and offhand dagger to be the way things go in there. Mariners use a forward back system called balance. In that system, your three main states are aftward, steady, and forward. You will default to a steady state, and the skills you use will push your balance either forward or backwards. Watch out though, if you find yourself too far in either end of the balance spectrum, you become unbalanced and will need to quickly move back towards steady, lest you find yourself penalized for remaining off balance. And what that means is you get stunned temporarily and then reset to the center if you're way, way off balance and don't get yourself back into balance. As a
Is the way that you get yourself back to balance imbibing various liquors? Somebody that, like the Mariner would go yo ho ho in a bottle of rum, and really what they're saying is, I better correct myself back to steady because I've gotten too aggressive. I've gotten too forward afterward.
Well,
I'm far too afterward right now, you guys.
well, I only got to level 10, so I did not see if there was a rum skill in order to rebalance yourself.
Rum skill. That would be phenomenal to have various liquor-like skills that unlock it at every level. Oh, you've unlocked bourbon. Congratulations. That's excellent. You unlocked vermouth. Everybody loses.
Move. The skill becomes available, and that allows you to instantly center without getting stunned or anything like that. You'd also back in the other direction a little bit. For example, if you go forward a few, then you might do a couple skills that push you back instead so that you go back and forth. But I've found that usually when I'm trying to attack in there, I'm doing many more forward skills and more stronger forward skills and not too many back skills. So until I got that level 10 skill that allows you to recenter yourself, I kept on getting a little bit too forward and a little bit too forward. So
was the stunning actually interfering with combat to a noticeable degree, or was it just that every once in a while you had a problem?
Well, only every once in a while on that one. Now, each of the positions have advantages and disadvantages. For example, forward, if you're forward, you tend to do more damage. So your forward skills tend to do more damage. So that's an advantage of being a little bit forward on there. Advantage of being a little bit back afterward is that you have better on your defenses. If you're centered, though, if you are centered, you are immune to stuns.
The only thing I really kind of see when I'm hearing this described is Jackie Chan doing the drunken master style of kung fu. He's kind of like staggering back and forward and back, and that's kind of interesting. So basically you haven't you didn't play with the combat enough to really get a sense of it, or did you? I mean, how did you feel about it? At least was it because that almost sounds like Roomkeeper-ish to me too.
It does, yeah. That balance thing is a little bit on the Roomkeeper side, except in the Roomkeeper, you like to stay on the extremes because you tend to either. And there's nothing to give you any incentive to be in the middle unless you were planning to switch to the opposite side. So, I mean, if you're suddenly going from attacking to healing on the Runekeeper, then you might play some skill that pushes you way to the center or something like this. But usually the Runekeeper, you try to stay in one direction or the other. At least that's been my experience. Well, the Mariner,
it's all about having an even keel.
Because you do want to be able to keep that even keel, because if you stay too far forward for too long, you have a tendency of getting knocked out for a little while. So you don't want to necessarily stay on the extremes that you would with the Runekeeper.
It feels like they could have had like a duality with this class, where the Mariner is always wanting to stay in the center and be well grounded, but the pirate is always operating at the extremes. See? Ramming speed.
Well, I'm not too sure ramming speed was something that pirates typically did, because
well, in fact, you miss it. you miss it. But when Aragorn and all the ghosts are pulling in port, oh, they're ramming ships right and left. It was a ramathon. They cut it out of the movies just because there was too much. It would have been too confusing. But there's a lot of ramming of ships that goes on in Middle Earth. It's just unreported
Uh-huh.
or underreported. How about that? So.
Underreported. Okay. As a practical note, yes, they did have some trouble with the balance UI where it wasn't able to be moved, but I'm hoping they'll fix that in the next beta. So now let's go into swordplay. Mariners are practiced melee combatants, and their swordplay skills can be used to create chains of skill combos. Every individual swordplay skill can give you a short buff on your last used swordplay skill, which will enhance one or more other swordplay skills. For example, using thrust will improve step back or advance if you use one of those directly after the thrust. On the thrust skill tooltip, you'll also notice that it says Advance applies a bleed in the red text. That indicates that there is a trait in the red line tree which will give thrust that swordplay combo effect. So there are some combinations in there that you will have in it. Not quite as complicated as the combinations that you have with the Warden, but this is very, very much on the combo department also. The thing is, though, is if you use too many combos in a row, you're probably going too far in the same direction, which could result in getting a little out of balance. And note that the Mariner has 3 trait specializations, the Shanty Caller, the Duelist, and the Rover. The Shanty Caller is a group support specialist with a focus on maximizing group damage. This line is built as a direct counterpart to the Captain's Master of War red line. Specializing in the Shanty Caller tree will give you access to a number of otherwise unavailable Shanty skills and will make all of your Shanties more potent. These skills in the West Wind and Guided by the Stars will benefit from this group, while skills like Marked Foes and Breaking of Thangorodrim will cause your enemies to take more damage from all your allies. So it looks like they're trying to give the Red Captain some competition.
What are you trying to say, Pine Leaf?
I'm not
Huh?
sure. I was just wanted to give you some notice there.
Maybe they should have a maximum height on Mariners too, so they can challenge the hobbits. So we could have. Maybe they should be shorter than hobbits. How about that? More
Mariners,
DPS support than captains and shorter than hobbits. Thusly, the Mariner was born. I love the entire concept behind shanties. I love this. Makes all of your shanties more potent. That's just a wonderful statement. I don't know why. But.
Okay. All right. The Duelist. The Duelist is a flexible melee fighter focused on maximizing your own damage output while retaining a flexible kit of skills to help you avoid damage and escape unwinnable entanglements. A Duelist sacrifices most of the group support potential found in the other specializations, but gains much improved swordplay damage and effectiveness. So this is your strongest of the swashbuckler lines, so to speak. So this is your swashbuckler line.
So the strongest swashbucklers are kind of just like self-absorbed, right? So they're just no group bonuses. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Well, at least you're honest.
And as for the Rover is a group support specialist with a focus on controlling and debuffing enemies and helping to keep the group alive. This line is a direct counterpart to the Lore Master's Ancient Master and the Burglar's Mischief Maker specializations. Specializing in the Rover tree will give you access to a number of potent debuffing and CCing skills which are otherwise unavailable. Though the Rover still gains several unique swordplay combos, most of their unique skills and effects are gained through haversack skills. And so those are the three lines. Now, when I was playing with it, I was in the rover tree, and I guess there were probably one or two spots in there where it felt like that maybe I needed somebody else with me. I guess that's probably part of it being a group support line. So maybe the next time I play the Mariner, I should try the duelist line to see how that works. Actually, things went well with the Mariner until I tried to go into that place in Swanfleet where you have all those level 10 brigands. Where you
Did it
have
take too kindly to you being there?
Well, of course they didn't take two, but I was level 9 at the time, and the brigands were level 10. And when you go to a place where you could have to fight 4 brigands at a time who are all a higher level than you are, you can see that it was a little bit of a challenge, especially with a class that you haven't played before. And those are the 3 specializations for the Mariner. And currently, the Mariner, if you want to play a Mariner, you would have to be either a human, a river hobbit, a high elf, or a stout axe. Now, the question is, how in the world did a group of people living in Mordor come to be associated with wanting to become mariners? Where they trying to go out to sea in order to wash the dust of Mordor off of them or something?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out that was there maybe a big river that ran down to the ocean somewhere in Mordor that
No, I was thinking that maybe the ships in the Sea of Nirn were crewed by stout axes or something.
the Nern boat.
All right. Yes.
I'm trying to picture the dwarven navy is the one I'm trying to fit my head around. But it, I have to concede that as Monty Python showed us in the Holy Grail, small pebbles can indeed float. So you'd think that they could just string a bunch of small pebbles together, and suddenly you've got a terrifying dwarven ship sailing down the river or in the ocean. Should I drink less caffeine before we start these?
I'm not sure on that. Let's go. All right. Any questions about the Mariner before I continue?
Honestly, kind of interested to see what the you're talking about the red line equivalent or the combat support. I'm definitely interested to see what that entails. But now that was something you didn't you just really didn't take a look at. Really, it was just the rover really that you took a look at initially, right?
Yeah, I didn't take a very close look at anything. I was just trying to see how the flow of the character worked, trying to level up, and gaining 10 levels in one day is probably not an ideal way in which to play a.
Yeah, that's right. What do you mean you got your doctorate? You just started class this morning. Yeah, it fast tracked me. What they should have done though, Pine? This would have been awesome. I'm just thinking off the top with the rover. So to compensate for the fact that you are in fact, more of a combat support role, what they should have done is if you are a rover, you also have a pet, like a parakeet or a parrot that also fights at your side like a war master's pet.
Oh, well, then the question is, what bird should it be? And I know you're trying to think of something real southern, like a parrot type or something like
Well,
that.
maybe swallows. African or European swallows. I can think of
Well,
right off the top of my head. I mean, why? You're right. Why limit? Why does it just have to be a classic parrot? Why can't you have a gigantic stork sitting on your shoulder? You know, why can't that be pirating? You know, or I'm sorry, not pirating, marinery.
Marinary. Well, I was thinking if you go by precedents of birds that have already been in game, then maybe a starling.
Ah, okay.
I mean, then at least we could have a talking bird in there, and well, that's always a possibility.
Oh, that's terrifying to think of.
What?
You could feel that talking bird would be the equivalent of having the trumpet. He's surrounded on all sides by these talking birds.
Yeah, that's the. There is that. But anyway, so I spent a little time there. I only had a day in there, and I went through there relatively quickly. And as a result, I was not doing all the quests, and that meant I was a little behind in my equipment, which is probably another reason why it was a bad idea to go into a level 10 zone with a level 9 character where you could run to 4 enemies at the same time.
Don't we kind of, are we sort of identifying a general problem with you and your equipment? Where like you're like, oh, I didn't know I used that or something, or it's like, oh, we have that. Oh yeah, mine. Let's see, mine. All right, I got it in 1832.
Well, just in case you want to know, I did manage to get a new chisel.
Excellent.
You could have found a chisel just laying in the street, and that would have been a massive upgrade for your chisel right there.
Finally, what level did you choose for your chisel?
Oh, it's a Goonabot chisel.
Okay, just double checking that you didn't upgrade it, just Moria level or something.
No,
I mean that would be a significant upgrade. Don't get me wrong, but
no, it is a Goonabot chisel. So
nice work.
okay.
Oh, that's so funny.
So yes, especially when I remembered that was the title of last week's episode. I think better get that upgraded. Yes. All right. So that was the first beta on the Mariner. So I'm sure that we'll have several more betas in there. They have not yet announced when the Mariner will be released, but since this was a 37.2 beta, I'm going to assume that it's going to be part of 37.2. And that will mean that 37.2 would probably be the pre-orders for the. That means because they've been known to do things like that. Like I think with the Brawler they had where the pre-orders came out with the previous update and that they had the Brawler available with the pre-order. So if you pre-ordered it, you get it. So I suspect that'll be the way which you could get the Mariner is if you pre-order the release. We'll find that out when the pre-orders come out, I presume, on whether or not that is included in there. Let's go into the other release notes. For classes, for the Guardian, bolstering blocks can now only proc once per second. This entirely passive heal was capable of generating more HPS than intended for the Guardian and was not in line with reactive healing available to the other tank specifications. And there's a lot of screaming on the forums for this.
They were. What was the screams that the Guardians were just far too powerful at this point?
No, the screams were from the Guardian saying it was a huge nerf.
Yeah, that's why. Okay, good. Yeah, that's why I was expecting these. It's like, wait a sec, you guys. You know what? You guys have been so hard on the Guardians. I mean, just give it to them. Just let them do it. Let's just let them have it. They can't do damage for a long time. They couldn't even tank. So I mean, it's just leave them. Leave the Guardians alone, man.
As for miscellaneous changes, the pure seagull cosmetic pet now sounds like a seagull.
Please tell me you knew what it sounded like before, because I'm hoping like Dragok, maybe. Dragok.
No, I think I actually had seagull out on one of my characters, and I heard it, and I think it sounded I was wondering why did it sound like a raven? So it was at least sounded like a bird.
The raven leans over to you. I'm in disguise.
And that is it for the first beta for update 37.2. I'm expecting this to come out in the middle of October, but we'll see when it really comes out, and probably in a month or so. And that's it for updates in there. We also have a link to an article on the tale of the shipwrecked mariners and Stowaway the Old Man on the Shore. So they have a guide on that one. And in there, the tale of the shipwrecked mariners, that's the same as it's been all the time. So, you know, the whole thing where you do this small quest and you pick up crams and those other things in order for barter items. The new item, though, is Stow Away the Old Man on the Shore. And in this, you will find someone just south of where all those Tomb Raiders are. You're familiar with along the Brandywine, just south of that set of ruins where you have all those Tomb Raiders on the
Yep,
east
I
bank of the
know
Brandywine.
exactly where you're talking about.
Yeah. So if you go south of there and right around the location where a tributary dumps into the Brandywine, that is where you'll find the old man that's on the shore, and he will give you a new storyline. And this new storyline is going to be about his life and his times. He was a mariner in Gondor, and the story about his battles against corsairs and the likes of that. And there are 11 missions in this, so it's broken up into 11 parts. Now, a couple of those missions are just talk and storytelling, while others have you fighting other things, usually corsairs. So that is the old man on the shore. And if you complete the entire thing, you get a set of cosmetics. And there is a picture of the cosmetics of the shipwrecked mariner at the bottom of the linked guide. Now, I take it neither of you two had a chance. Well, actually, I don't think Sans had a chance to play LOTRO due to her internet currently.
That would be accurate, unfortunately.
Yes. And Krister, did you have a chance to try this yet?
No, I haven't, but that's a hard sell for me right off the bat. Just understanding that the name of the cosmetic has to do with you washing up on shore, basically. So I'm not thinking fancy duds. I'm not thinking style. I'm just thinking like ragged clothing.
Oh, fortunately, this was his spare clothing that he had inside of his haversack.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, I'd immediately going like, oh boy, I can't coordinate wet, damp, sea-soaked clothing. I mean,
yeah. And in fact, this clothing, as far as I can tell, did not belong to the ship, to the person that you're talking to. It actually belonged to a friend of his who happens to be the same class and race as you are, because it seems to fit you perfectly.
So with those clothes on, if a bounder pulled me over, I would literally be able to say, "But sir, these aren't my pants. These are my friend's pants."
You could probably say that almost any time, actually, in the early levels, especially if you've been doing any quests for rangers.
In the low levels of LOTRO, they encourage you to wear many different people's pants. It's a community thing. It's like walking in someone else's shoes, but pants.
Well, yeah. But anyway, you can earn these cosmetics, and I think they look reasonably nice. And if you have a chance to, if you have a chance to try the event, then do so. And I would say it would take you probably a couple hours in order to get through all the missions. So that's the one thing to take into account on the whole thing. And as I said before, this is running until the 19th of September. It'll end if you go by server time very early on September 20th. So I would say if you want to do it, try to do it by September 19th. And that's it for the news for this week. So let's go and head into our store sales. Sans, what's on sale this week?
Well, before we get to sales, just a reminder, you can still get your free Daily Gold Hobbit presents if you are VIP until October 10th, so do log in for those if you want them. The one time I managed to log in for them, I got assorted dwarf candles, so your mileage may vary.
Congrats.
Yeah, thanks. And for store sales, you can make your piece of Middle Earth shine, get 20% off, select housing decorations, select housing sets, housing property writs, and select cloaks through September 21st. You should definitely check the cloaks to see if they are available elsewhere without having to spend money on them or LOTRO points. And your weekly coupon for this week is a free Tome of Defense, which will last for 6 hours, which is awesome. And the coupon code in all capital letters is DEFENSE. DEFENSE. And that is also good through September 21st. Yeah. The Tome of Defense is spelled one way, and the coupon code is spelled another way, which is slightly confusing, but yeah.
Well, it just means that Standing Stone has British and U.S. employees. Is basically
right.
what it
Like one employee wrote it in the British thing, and the other wrote it in the English Standard.
One says aluminium, the other one says aluminum. So.
Yes, I'm pretty sure that whoever runs their store is using American English, and whoever wrote the in-game item used the British spelling. All right, so that is what's on sale this week, and yes, the Hobbit presents until October 10th. It's interesting that date of October 10th because that is just before the Fall Festival starts. And also, it's just before the Fall Festival starts, which means that's probably when they're going to they're probably have scheduled an update to the game to happen to turn off the free VIP thing. Is my guess is I think that's going to be when 37.2 is going to come out. Is my current guess on that matter. We'll have to see. But now, I was thinking about reminiscing on something, and but this time what I thought we could reminisce about is our first time playing with a new class. Now, when I say new class, it might be your first time playing the game because, by definition, whatever class you played first would be a new class, or it could be the first time to play a more recently released class, or maybe there's a classic class you never played before and you decide to play it. And if you have any memories about what happened the first time you played a class, or whether you liked it, you found it challenging, or anything like that.
I can go first.
Okay.
So, one of the first characters that I made was a minstrel. And I was new to the game, and new to MMOs, and new to the class.
Okay.
And I had options to choose, like, do I want light, medium, or heavy armor? And the only armor I was allowed to equip was light armor. And so then, as I'm, like, learning my skills, I noticed that some of them do light damage. So I started looking for the ones that would do medium and heavy damage, and I couldn't find them. But I was pretty sure that light damage would be, like, the weakest damage. And so I was trying to play my minstrel without using any skills that dealt light damage in the tooltip. And I made it up to, like, confront, who is it? Pompash? I don't know, up at the vineyard. and was like, this is ridiculous. This is so slow and so boring. You would think the minstrel could do better than this. And I logged off there, and it took me several months to log back into the character.
Ah, was it? When did you finally learn that light damage was a particularly good type of damage to do?
When somebody suggested that my hunter use light oil. And I said, well, why would I want to do that? Like, wouldn't like medium or heavy oil be better? And they're like, no, like it'll do light, like the sunlight damage. And it's particularly good against these enemies that you're fighting. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I tried it, and it was particularly good against those enemies. And so then I was like, wait a second, maybe that means that if I use those skills on my minstrel, that would be a good thing. I went back in and used one of those skills on one of the enemies that was still nearby, because I was in a dangerous area when I logged her out, and the enemy just dropped over dead, and I was like, aha! This is so much more fun.
The light damage does heavy damage.
Right? Yeah, but that definitely took a while to clear that misunderstanding up.
That's awesome, because you just envisioned that the way that you were killing them was you're like just one of those door-to-door magazine salesmen that was just going on and on and on about the magazines, and then finally just like, I can't stand it anymore, and just dropped over dead.
It was like minor ballad, minor ballad, minor ballad, minor ballad, auto attack, minor ballad.
All doing were minor ballads. Oh, that's right, because all the big good skills you do light damage.
Light damage. But I thought light damage was bad. Yeah. And
That
I was
is
trying
phenomenal.
really hard to use my sword. Because she had one equipped. And of course that would be the weapon. And no, like just clicking and unclicking the auto attack thing while in a fight does not in fact help the fight go faster. That, though, took a lot longer for me to figure out.
I mean, you dropped down to almost having like a Guardian level experience of doing DPS there. Jeez, I mean.
Well, at the time, Guardians were doing better DPS than I was. Yes. That was before they got nerfed. Which sucked.
All right, Krister, do you have any stories about the first time you played class?
Yes, and that would be, I think, one of my favorite things was when the Bjornings were introduced, and because we had a lot of excitement in our kin about the Bjornings, and everybody was, that was during the golden age when everybody was there and it was very active, and so we managed to get this group. We had for at least probably about 4 or 5 sessions, we had a full raid of Bjornings, and it was absolutely hysterical to just be part of this group. You have these 12 bears, so you can just imagine, you just imagine an orc, just playing in the forest, and they see this Bjorn, and they're like, oh boy, that's beautiful. I mean, well, I better get out of here. I mean, the heck is that? Is that 2, 3? What is that? 10? What? 10 Bjornings? Oh my god! And so so we were just running around, beating the crap out of everything in the forest. But my favorite part of that was when we accidentally found that if you were able to, I can't even remember what you do now, but it was like the instant you were about to lose all of your wrath, I think it was, if you timed it right and hit your bear transformation just right, you could perma-bear. So you could actually kind of glitch yourself into being in bear form the entire time. Because that was our main complaint when the Bjorning first came out. I was like, why can't I just be a bear 100% of the time, whenever I want? Why is it depending on my wrath? So figuring that little trick out was great. And then, of course, having the frustration of I want to be in bear form anytime I want to be, to have that eventually happen to the class too. But the Bjorning stuff, that raid of Bjornings was so much. It was just absolutely hysterical, and it was so fun just to see this terror. I mean, just think about it: 12 bears running over a hill towards you. I mean, that's that's a life-changing moment there, I think. But how about you? Fine. What was your favorite one?
See, trying to remember the various times I first had went to a class on there, and the one I remember the most had to have been on the day Moria released. So 2 classes were introduced on that day, the Warden and the Runekeeper. And when they brought up the servers, my home server, Nimrodel, was not open. There was a problem with Nimrodel, so therefore while all the other servers came up, I think Nimrodel and one other server could not come up. So I logged into Winfola instead and said, all right, I'll create a temporary character here. And I made this temporary character the Warden so I could start to learn the Warden and how the Warden operated. So I created this temporary version of a character that I called Pineleaf. And
Was this your first Pineleaf?
This was my first Pineleaf. Yeah. This would have been the first Pineleaf because this was my first Warden. And that's a name that I've only used for Wardens. So yeah, this was the first Pineleaf that I created on there. So I created this Warden, and I remember getting up to level 15. And I remember getting up to level 15 because I got to the point of doing the class quests. And when it first came out, that class quest, back then, that was a tough quest. That level 15 class quest in there. And I try to remember whether I barely survived it or if I managed to get killed in or if I failed it a couple of times, because that's one of those class quests in there that's very easy to fail the first time you're trying to play the class, because you have to know, no, you can't get too far from the line. If you go too far from the line, you fail the class quest. If you tank too much, then you're likely to get killed. If you don't tank enough, then the person that you're with, because you have to keep the person you're with also alive, and could get killed. Now, of course, the person you're with, it completely ignores the rule about not leaving the line. He's constantly. One time I went forward in order to stay up with him, and I failed the quest because I left the line. So it's learning there, making sure that you do that class quest right is one of the real challenges I had in first playing the Warden, is because that's a very, very tricky one. And I think with the changing in how damage goes versus health and all that stuff, I think it's less likely that you're going to have too many problems with it. But it is still one of those finely tuned class quests that you got to be careful on there. And I remember the same thing with the Runekeeper. The first time I played a Runekeeper, the first time I ran that class quest, that was a real dilly, because I don't know if you've ever played a Runekeeper. That's on top of Weathertop. And,
oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and that quest, and I think they've toned down the quest a little bit since it, because it used to be the toughest class quest I could think. I think sometimes I would just wait till I was level 18 or 19 on my Runekeeper before doing that quest, if I was any way at all interested in keeping that Undying title. I would not do it at 15. Because that was a real challenge. But anyway, in the Warden, I got up to level 15 with this character, and about the time I hit level 15 and completed that class quest, that's when Nimrodel finally opened up. I decided to stay on Winfola. I said, no, that was my character. And so now that character was eventually transferred over to Crick Hollow when Winfola closed up. But anyway, that became my main character that I had all through that. Now these days, the version of Pineleaf that's on Landreful is turning into my main, because I've been playing more on Landreful recently than on Crick Hollow. But that little experience there on that first day of Moria, and trying out the Warden and trying to learn all these things. And I must say that learning the Warden has always been a tricky one. I don't think I ever really completely mastered it. I remember one time it was right when they released the first area of Gondor, and I was going into the Paths of the Dead, where you had that quest into the Paths of the Dead in order to continue the epics, in order to start Volume 4. It was there when I finally learned the value of the bleeds on the warden. I mean, that is how long it took me to understand. Despite the fact that it being my main all those years after the release of Mori in there, it still took me a long time to understand bleeds. So,
Yeah,
yes,
because it feels like you really never master the warden, but what you could master is the routine that you've identified for you playing the warden. You know,
yeah, those. Maybe there's somebody out there who's mastered the warden completely.
I feel like that's the most. That's what I loved about the captain was there was when you start to understand all the skills together, there's a complexity to it, and
Yeah.
the kind of the same with the lore master. But the warden has always seemed like that one's turned to 11, as opposed to every other class.
Well, the Mariner is. I feel like it's going to have a couple of things that feel like it's going to be Brown turned up to 11 and challenge in there. It's up there. I think it's getting up there with the Warden on how complex it can be because of the balancing mechanism.
Well, and of course, my main curiosity too, now that you brought up the Mariner again too, is the talking about their, quote unquote red line build. Is okay? So if is it really a competition with the captain, or is it a complement too? Because what if you had a red line Mariner and a red line captain in a group? Are you just pumping out the most insane DPS you can at that
Well,
point?
that's an
Or
interesting question. First of all, it's a blue line Mariner that
oh,
can be the equivalent of a
sorry,
red line captain.
I'll just refer to them all as Paisley line from now on.
Yes. So that's an interesting question on whether they will complement each other and really make your rest of the party really powerful as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah, that could be a big. That'd be really cool too. I mean, that's you could like build a glass cannon party, where you're pumping out all this DPS, but yeah, you guys better kill them quick or we're all dead.
Well, that might be tough in a raid.
Everything's tough in a raid.
Okay, you got a point there. All right, and those are memories relating to playing a class for the first time. So, anything else you want to add before we head on to our weekend gaming?
Well, it's just that LOTRO was the first game where I loved the system itself and the world so much that I stayed and played classes because usually my friends were, we were just hopping from one new MMO to the next MMO to the next. So it was just it was cool that I got to have a bunch of experiences with all the classes with LOTRO because I stuck with it.
Ah, yes. It does help me out because I remember that. See, LOTRO was, I think, only the second MMO that I played.
And just try to fit
Oh
your head
no, no,
around
no,
how long
third
we
because
played
I
it.
did. That's right. I did do some DDO, I think, before LOTRO was released. So it would have been my third then. All right, let's head into our weekend gaming. Krister, what were you up to?
Well, we had our Friday night kin endeavor, and so it was kind of a mixed bag in that defeated at every turn. Truly, the complication was we decided to do a raid even though we only had 9 people. So
Oops.
we understood that we kind of handicapped ourselves in that, and then we were just having challenges. But the good news was that last night, 2 of our old dear kin members returned, including our former leader, and so they've been talking about doing stuff more regularly. So that just adds. That's awesome because that adds 2 more people, and then you never know. Pine Leaf, there might be one day where you're available. We have 1 more person available, and then we've got ourselves a full raid. So I'm looking forward to it. I feel like we're going to be able to do some raid content again, which is going to be always nice, and it'd be really nice if we could start doing it consistently too. But anyways, last night was actually a lot of fun, even though we were defeated at every turn and didn't really accomplish anything. It was our camaraderie that was the treasure last night.
Okay.
And if anything, that's worth at least 2 suits of Matham armor right there. So, and then the other things I've been doing this week is I'm trooping through my self training of Blender, and I'm getting ready to take a class on it as well. I'm going to see if I can do the 3D modeling and animation stuff. It's looking really fun, and I've been really enjoying that experience. And then, of course, Starfield came out, so I've been finding that my extensive, mind-numbing amount of time I played Fallout 4 has really served me well. In Starfield, because basically the control experience is pretty much identical to Fallout. So I have a highly trained space. He's not a pirate, I guess, but he doesn't do very nice things. And it's actually been pretty enjoyable. So, Sans, what have you been getting into?
Well, my internet connection hasn't been very good for most of the week, but I played some more Raft and discovered that peaceful mode is a nice way to unwind in the evening. I also
Why, you want
discovered...
to avoid
Huh?
you want to avoid sharks when you want to relax?
Yeah, there's something about that, like adrenaline rush of discovering a shark is biting the piece of board that you're standing on that I just didn't need when trying to relax. Yeah.
Now,
So
instead of biting your board, were they like delivering sushi or something, or doing something
no,
nice?
they're just swimming around. And I did discover though, if you poke them, they forget that they're peaceful and will definitely fight back. So they're more like semi-peaceful. But yeah, it was a nice way to unwind and just kind of float around collecting trash and see what you can build before the evening closes. And it was kind of nice. And that's pretty much all I did this week. How was your week, Pineleaf?
All right. I'll begin with my roomkeeper, who listened to the story of an old man who was washed ashore along the Brandywine, meaning that I managed to go through the entire storyline of the Stowaway. And then my low-level captain, I visited several hobbit villages in Swanfleet. And then my lore master reached the haunted inn and rescued some captured elves in Danneglor. And that is my week in LOTRO. We currently have 13 supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to join this illustrious rate of players and help LOTRO players, you can go to the donations page to support the Players Alliance on Patreon. Your money will be used for our podcast hosting, website hosting, and to pay for our live shows. If you'd like to send us an email, you can send it to podcast@loachplayers.com. The Players Alliance has 2 shows on Saturdays at 8:30 p.m. US Eastern Time. We have Loach Players News and re-record DDO Players News when Drac is available. And you could see our live shows at loachplayers.com/live. And that is all for tonight, and this is Politics News reminding you to skirmish responsibly.